So that's how it started.
What year was that?
1975. It was. Let me see. He was 42.
She saw Elvis at his weakest and at his most generous. Her name is Marian Cocke. Not a celebrity, not a Hollywood name. But when Elvis Presley needed comfort, when he needed loyalty, when the spotlight faded and the pain kicked in, he asked for her. She wasn't just his nurse. She was his witness, his confidant. And on the night before he died, she was the last person he reached out to. This is not a tabloid story. It's not scandal or conspiracy. This is a story of care, of quiet heartbreak, and of a man the world thought they knew, but only a few really did. Because beyond the gold suits, the screaming crowds, and the private jets, Elvis was fragile, lonely, exhausted, and Marian saw it all. She spent months inside Graceland. She held his arm during sleepless nights. She saw him cry. She saw him laugh. She even ate sandwiches with him on the back of his private jet, while worrying about making her nursing shift the next morning. Marian Cocke didn't go looking for fame. She didn't write a book to cash in. In fact, she kept quiet for years. But in one quiet interview, decades later, she spoke. And when she did, the world heard something it rarely does when it comes to Elvis Presley. The truth, unpolished, unhyped, unafraid to show the cracks. She talked about the real Elvis, the one who gave her a car, the one who slept on a daybed so she could have Lisa Marie's room, the one who called her at 2 a.m., not to complain, but to say, "I just needed you here." It isn't just about music history. It's about the final months of a man who gave everything to the world, and what it looked like when the world stopped giving back. So grab a seat, take a breath, because Marian Cocke, the nurse who saw it all, is about to take us somewhere few have ever gone. Behind the gates of Graceland, into the heart of a king.
Army. I was born in Fort Benning, and I went to the hospital one day with my mother. I said, "I'm waiting for my mother to come out." And she said, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" I said, "I'm going to be a nurse."
Before Graceland, before Elvis, there was just a little girl in a quiet hospital waiting room. She was 5 years old, too young to understand sickness, but old enough to feel the pull of something bigger. Her mother had brought her to visit a friend who had just given birth. Marian had to wait outside, like all children did back then. She sat there, swinging her legs, when a nurse walked by and smiled. "What are you doing here, little girl?" And without hesitation, Marian replied, "I'm waiting for my mother. And one day, I'm going to be a nurse." That was it. No drama, no second thoughts. Just a little spark. That turned into a lifelong fire. Marian Cocke was born at Fort Benning, Georgia. Her father was regular Army, and discipline ran deep in the family. But so did kindness and commitment. She kept her word from that day in the waiting room and went on to serve more than 60 years in the field of nursing. 60. Let that sink in. That included 50-plus years at Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis and another decade assisting private physicians. She wasn't chasing a paycheck. She wasn't chasing clout. She showed up every day because helping others was simply who she was. She cared for hundreds, no, thousands of patients in her career, from tiny newborns to the terminally ill, from quiet families to rock and roll royalty. She never saw herself as anything special, but to the people she cared for, she was everything. There's a quiet dignity in that kind of devotion, the kind that doesn't make headlines, but changes lives. So when Dr. George Nicopolis, Dr. Nick, came to her one day and said, "I need a private suite for a patient. Elvis is sick," she didn't get excited. She got ready. Because whether it was a soldier's child, or the king of rock and roll, Marian Cocke had only ever wanted to do one thing: take care of people. It wasn't excitement she felt. It was hesitation. When Dr. Nick walked into her unit that day in January of 1975, Marian Cocke was just doing her job, managing a full floor with 52 patients under her care. Many were critically ill. Some she visited twice a day. So when the doctor said, "Elvis is sick. I need to bring him in," Marian paused. "I don't want him on my floor," she said calmly. Not because she didn't care, but because she did. Bringing in Elvis Presley meant bringing the whirlwind with him. The security, the attention, the distraction, and she worried her other patients would suffer for it. But Dr. Nick made a promise. "I swear, we'll keep it quiet." She relented, and that's when everything changed. SFX, soft knock, hospital door opens, ambient room tone. She walked into the room, and there he was, sitting up on the edge of the bed, being shaved, Elvis Presley, in a paper gown, no sunglasses, no stage, no spotlight, just a man, with tired eyes and a need for comfort. "You know who this is?" someone asked. "Yes," she nodded gently. But the moment wasn't starstruck. It was human. And as everyone got ready to leave, Elvis said something unexpected. He turned to Joe Esposito and said, "We need to talk about private nurses." Then he looked at Marian. "What do you want me to do?" She smiled, calm and steady. "That's up to you, honey." He didn't flinch. "I'll do whatever you say, but I want you to be the one who takes care of me." That was it. The king of rock and roll had made his choice, and in a moment of pain, of exhaustion, of real vulnerability, he didn't ask for a doctor. He didn't ask for a celebrity friend. He asked for Marian, and she said yes. Most people only dreamed of walking through the gates of Graceland. But Marian Cocke? She lived there. For 6 months, she wasn't just Elvis's nurse. She was a quiet part of the household, so trusted, so respected, that Elvis offered her something deeply personal. "You'll sleep in Lisa Marie's room." Marian remembers how carefully Elvis said it, not as a boast, but as a gesture of deep trust. Lisa Marie, just a little girl at the time, was away, and her room became Marian's home base. Meanwhile, Elvis moved to a daybed. "Now, tell me that's not something," Marian would later say, smiling. "The king of rock and roll gave up his bed. For me." But even in that surreal reality, Marian remained grounded. She remembered the first time she walked into Lisa's room, suitcase in hand, taking it all in. Dolls, pink tones, traces of a child's world frozen in time. And then she noticed the mirror, not on the wall, on the ceiling. She laughed. A mirror on the ceiling, can you imagine? When she teased Elvis about it later, he grinned. "I thought it was cool." Marian raised an eyebrow. "Well, I thought it was tacky." And that was their rhythm. Playful, honest, real. Voiceover. Transition to warm strings. Daily life at Graceland wasn't the circus people imagined. It was a strange blend of quiet routines and celebrity chaos. Elvis might stay up until 3 a.m. watching TV, then suddenly decide everyone needed to go horseback riding at dawn. Some nights were filled with gospel singing in the den. Other nights were just silence. But through it all, Marian was there, checking his vitals, managing his medication, sometimes just sitting with him in the dark, saying nothing. Because sometimes that's what he needed most. Graceland wasn't just a mansion. For Marian, it became a second home. And Elvis, not the icon, but the man, became something else too. A patient, a friend, a soul she would fight for until the very end. By the time Marian Cocke came into his life, Elvis Presley wasn't just tired. He was soul-weary. She saw it in his eyes. Behind the rhinestones and the million-dollar smile was a man pushed to exhaustion, drained not just by fame, but by people. He was used, she said, and he was abused. Everyone wanted something: his money, his name, his light. And yet, he kept giving. To Marian, he gave things no nurse expects from a patient. One day, he handed her keys to a brand-new Lincoln Continental. "You need a car, don't you?" he said casually. Another time, he offered her a diamond cross, not in a grand gesture, but like a man giving something sacred. "I want you to have this." And maybe the most precious gift of all was his time. Sometimes he'd invite her to just sit and talk about nothing, about everything. Elvis didn't complain much, but Marian listened between the silences. He wanted to be loved, she said. Not worshipped, just loved. That desire to please, so deeply rooted, drove him. It made him generous, it made him magnetic, but it also broke him. He gave until he had nothing left, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and even those closest to him couldn't always stop the tide. "He would give you his last breath if you needed it," Marian once said, but no one seemed to notice. He was running out of air. To the world, Elvis was larger than life. To Marian, he was something even more rare. A man with a cracked heart who still tried to heal others. Before the heartbreak, before the tragedy, there were deviled eggs and peanut butter sandwiches and a plane that didn't always land where it planned to. Marian Cocke wasn't just Elvis's nurse. Sometimes she was his unofficial road buddy. He'd suddenly ask, "Want to go to Vegas tonight?" And boom, they were in the air. Marian, her teenage daughter, Linda Thompson, all crammed into Elvis's private jet. No fancy meals, just sandwiches, sometimes smashed flat, and those deviled eggs Marian always brought along. "I'm a nurse," she laughed. "We travel with snacks." Once, he flew them to California just to hang out. They talked, joked, and walked on the beach like it was the most normal thing in the world. But it wasn't normal, because Marian had a shift the next morning in Memphis. "Elvis, I have to be at work." "You'll make it," he grinned. And somehow, she did. It wasn't just the glamour or the jet. It was Elvis's spontaneity, his desire to bring people joy, even if it was with nothing more than a plane ride and a plate of eggs. Moments like those showed the boyish charm beneath the legend.